A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
You know, Corn, this whole show runs on GPU compute, and we wouldn't be here without Modal.
Seriously. And that's what powers all our text-to-speech. Everything you're hearing right now.
They're an AI infrastructure platform. Developers use them to run GPU workloads in the cloud with zero infrastructure headaches.
If you're building anything with AI, check them out. Modal.com. You know, Herman, I was rewatching The Fifth Element the other day, the 1997 classic, and there is that iconic scene where the flying Chinese food boat pulls up to Bruce Willis's apartment window. It's seamless, it's high speed, and it's exactly what we were promised the future would look like. Fast forward nearly 30 years to 2026, and while I can't quite stick my head out of a skyscraper window to grab a lo mein, Daniel's prompt today suggests we might be closer than the skeptics think.
It's a classic case of the future being here, just not evenly distributed yet, Corn. And by the way, for everyone listening, today's episode of My Weird Prompts is actually being powered by Google Gemini 3 Flash, which is writing our script as we speak. I'm Herman Poppleberry, and I've been diving into the flight logs and white papers on this all week because Daniel's asking the right questions. We've reached a weird inflection point where the toy phase of drones is officially over, but the skies full of pizzas phase is hitting some very grounded reality checks.
It's funny you say that, because I feel like I've been hearing Amazon Prime Air is coming next year, every year since 2013. It's become the nuclear fusion of logistics, always a decade away. I remember Jeff Bezos on 60 Minutes showing off that octocopter and thinking, okay, by 2017 my doorbell will never stop ringing. But Daniel mentioned some specific milestones, like Zipline hitting over 500,000 commercial deliveries. That doesn't sound like a pilot program anymore. That sounds like a utility.
That's the distinction we have to make right out of the gate. There are two parallel tracks here, medical delivery and consumer retail. They have completely different risk profiles, different regulatory hurdles, and frankly, different levels of need. If you're in a rural village in Rwanda and you need a rare blood type for a surgery, a drone isn't a luxury, it's a literal lifeline. If you're in a suburb in Dallas and you want a hot latte delivered to your patio without talking to a human, that's a convenience play. The tech is similar, but the why and the how are worlds apart.
Well, let's start with that where factor. Daniel asked if there are any countries where this is actually mainstream. You mentioned Rwanda, and I've seen those clips of the zipline catapults. It looks like a miniature aircraft carrier deck in the middle of a forest. Is that the gold standard right now?
If you want to see the future of autonomous logistics, you don't look at San Francisco, you look at Kigali. Zipline started there in 2016, and they didn't just do a proof of concept. They built a national drone corridor. They now have distribution centers that cover 80% of the Rwandan population. We're talking about 15-minute delivery times for blood products, vaccines, and anti-venom. They expanded into Ghana in 2023, and the scale is staggering. They aren't flying one or two drones, they have a fleet management system that handles hundreds of flights a day across hundreds of miles.
See, that's what kills me. We have this perception in the West that we're the leaders in tech, but the regulatory environment here is so thick you can barely fly a kite without a permit. Why did it work there first? Is it just a lack of red tape, or is the geography the primary driver?
It's a bit of both, but mostly it's the value proposition. In Rwanda, the ground truth is that roads can be washed out by rain, or the terrain is so mountainous that a 20-mile trip takes 4 hours by truck. A drone ignores the mud. It ignores the switchbacks. The government saw a chance to leapfrog traditional infrastructure, much like how many African nations skipped landlines and went straight to mobile phones. They created a regulatory framework specifically for this. In the US, the FAA is trying to shoehorn drones into a system built for Cessnas and Boeings. It's like trying to regulate a bicycle using the same rules you use for a freight train.
But how does that look on the ground in Kigali? Is it just constant buzzing? Or have they integrated it into the medical system so tightly that it's invisible?
It's integrated. A doctor at a remote clinic sends a WhatsApp message or uses a dedicated portal. At the distribution center, the Nest, a technician packs the blood or medicine into a specialized box with a paper parachute. The drone is placed on a zip rail. It launches with a literal whoosh, and 20 minutes later, the doctor hears a faint buzz, sees a package drift down into a designated 10-foot grassy patch, and the drone is already turning back for home. There's no landing, no handoff, no paperwork at the site. It's pure, frictionless logistics.
That's the dream, right? Frictionless. But what about the consumer side? Daniel mentioned Alphabet's Wing in Australia. I've heard people in Queensland can basically get a meat pie dropped in their backyard while they're watching footy. Is that actually mainstream, or is it just a very expensive hobby for Google?
It's surprisingly real in places like Logan and Canberra. Logan, Australia, is often cited as the drone delivery capital of the world for consumers. Residents use an app, much like Uber Eats, and they can order groceries, hardware, or coffee. The drone flies at about 60 miles per hour, hovers at about 20 feet over the yard, and lowers the package on a tether. No landing required. They've done hundreds of thousands of deliveries there. The reason it works in those specific Australian suburbs is the layout. You have large backyards, clear lines of sight, and a community that, for the most part, has embraced the whir of the propellers as the sound of progress.
I bet the neighbors love that. Oh, there goes Susan's third mocha of the morning, sounding like a swarm of angry hornets. But let's talk about the US context, because that's where the Amazon problem comes in. Daniel brought up a pretty shocking number. Amazon's internal projections for 2025 put the cost of a single drone delivery at $63. Herman, I'm a sloth. I'm lazy, but I'm not. Pay $63 to deliver a $10 bottle of aspirin, lazy. How is that even a business?
It isn't, not at $63. To put that in perspective, a traditional man in a van last mile delivery, like your standard UPS or FedEx stop, usually costs the company between $2 and $5 per stop, depending on density. Amazon needs to get the drone cost down to that $5 range to even breathe the same air as traditional logistics. The $63 figure comes from a few things: high hardware costs, the observer problem, and low utilization.
The observer problem being that the FAA basically wants a human staring at every drone with binoculars, right?
Precisely. Well, not precisely, I should say. The FAA requires what they call Beyond Visual Line of Sight waivers, or BVLOS. For a long time, the rule was that a human pilot had to have eyes on the craft at all times. If you have to pay a guy to stand on a roof and watch a drone fly 3 miles, your labor costs are insane. You're essentially paying a pilot's salary to deliver a bag of Cheetos. The holy grail of the economics is a 20-to-1 ratio. One operator sitting in a control center somewhere monitoring 20 or 30 autonomous drones simultaneously. That's when the labor cost per delivery drops to cents instead of dollars.
But wait, how does one person monitor 20 drones? If 3 of them have an emergency at once, say a bird attack and a motor failure, that operator is going to have a very bad day.
That's exactly why the software has to be bulletproof. The operator isn't flying the drones with a joystick, they are mission managers. They see a dashboard of green dots. If a dot turns yellow, the AI is already executing a safety maneuver, and the human just confirms the choice. If it turns red, the human takes over. The goal is to make the human the exception handler rather than the driver. But until the FAA trusts that the AI can handle 99% of those yellow dot moments, we're stuck with high labor costs.
So, until we get those BVLOS waivers at scale, this is just a very loud way to lose money. But even then, there's the hardware. These aren't the $200 drones you buy at the mall. What are we looking at for a commercial-grade delivery bot?
You're talking about tens of thousands of dollars per unit. Take the Amazon MK30, which they started rolling out more broadly in 2025. It's designed to fly in light rain. It has advanced detect and avoid sensors, which are essentially mini radars and lidars, and it has to be redundant. If one motor fails, it can't just plummet onto someone's golden retriever. It has to be able to limp home or land safely. All that redundancy adds weight and cost, and then there's the battery. Lithium-ion batteries are heavy. The more weight you carry in batteries, the less useful weight, the payload you can carry. Most of these drones are capped at a 5-pound payload. That covers 85% of Amazon's inventory, but it means you aren't getting a new microwave delivered via drone anytime soon.
I'll stick to the van for the microwave. But let's look at the detect and avoid, or DAA tech. Daniel asked about connectivity. If these things are flying autonomously, they can't just be on a wing in a prayer. They need a data link. If my drone is carrying my vintage porcelain cat collection and it hits a dead zone in the cellular network, does it just give up on life?
That's where it gets technical. Most urban delivery drones, like the ones Wing uses in their Dallas-Fort Worth trials, rely on redundant LTE and 5G networks. They use something called network slicing. Essentially, the carriers say T-Mobile or Verizon carves out a dedicated lane of bandwidth specifically for drone command and control. It's prioritized traffic. So even if everyone on the ground is at a stadium trying to upload 40K video of a touchdown, the drone's heartbeat signal doesn't get throttled.
Sorry, your heart transplant is delayed because the local teens are obsessed with a new TikTok dance. Glad we're solving that with network slicing. But what about the rural routes? Zipline isn't exactly finding 5G towers in the middle of the rainforest.
For those routes, they use a mix of high-frequency radio and satellite links. Many of the newer craft are being outfitted with L-band satellite terminals or even Starlink integrations for backup. But the real safety feature isn't just the link, it's the edge intelligence. These drones are edge-heavy, meaning they have enough onboard processing power to make decisions without the cloud. If the connection drops, the drone doesn't just freeze. It has a pre-programmed lost link protocol. It might climb to a specific altitude, check its GPS, and return to base. Or, if it senses a mechanical issue, it uses its onboard cameras to find a safe landing zone, like an empty field or a parking lot, and puts itself down. It's basically a flying robot with a very strong sense of self-preservation.
I wish I had a lost link protocol for when I forget why I walked into the kitchen. I'd just return to the couch automatically. But okay, so we've got the connectivity, we've got the local AI. Now let's talk about the Achilles heel Daniel mentioned, the weather. I live in a place where it rains if you look at the sky the wrong way. If I order my drone-delivered pizza and a thunderstorm rolls in, am I just hungry?
You're probably getting a notification that your flight is weather delayed or being diverted to a ground vehicle. This is the biggest hurdle for mainstream 24/7 adoption. Most current delivery drones are rated for winds up to about 25 or 30 miles per hour. Anything more than that and the flight stability becomes a nightmare, especially when you're trying to hover and lower a package on a string. You become a giant kite.
A $63 kite with a pepperoni pizza attached.
And it's not just the wind. Rain is a massive issue for the sensors. Most of these drones use optical cameras and LiDAR to see obstacles like power lines or trees. Heavy rain or snow creates noise in that data. It's like trying to drive a car with a frosted windshield. While some newer models, like the Zipline P2 or the Amazon MK30, are IP rated for light rain, they aren't all-weather craft yet. There's also the temperature factor. If it's 110 degrees in Phoenix, the air is thinner. You get less lift. The batteries get hotter. Your flight range might drop by 30%. So, for the foreseeable future, drone delivery is going to be a fair weather service.
Which kind of ruins the instant gratification part of it. The time I most want a drone to deliver my soup is when it's pouring rain and I don't want to go outside. If the drone also doesn't want to go outside, we're back to square one. But let's talk about that zipline hover and drop thing Daniel mentioned. He said they don't land, they drop a droid on a tether. That sounds like something out of a spy movie.
It's actually brilliant engineering. Their new Platform 2 system uses a high-altitude mothership drone that stays about 300 feet in the air, well above trees and power lines. When it reaches the delivery target, it hovers and lowers a small, stabilized delivery droid on a cable. This little droid has its own tiny fans to keep it steady against the wind. It touches down softly, releases the package, and gets winched back up. This solves two problems, noise and safety. People hate drones buzzing right next to their windows. By staying at 300 feet, the mothership is much quieter. And you don't have to worry about a toddler running out to grab the drone while the propellers are still spinning.
It's basically a high-tech version of a fishing line. I like it. It feels less intrusive than a giant mechanical bird landing on my porch. But Herman, let's get into the skies full of drones scenario Daniel asked about. If we actually scale this, if Walmart, Amazon, and the local pharmacy are all using drones, how do we prevent a mid-air demolition derby? We're talking about thousands of autonomous objects at 200 feet. That's not a regulation problem, that's a swarm intelligence problem.
This is where we talk about UTM, unmanned traffic management. Think of it as an automated digital version of air traffic control. Right now, if you're a pilot, you talk to a human in a tower. In a drone-saturated future, the drones talk to a centralized software grid. Every drone broadcasts its position, its speed, and its intent, where it's going in the next 30 seconds. The UTM system acts as a deconfliction engine. If two drones are on a collision course, the system sends a nudge to one of them to change altitude by 20 feet.
And this is all happening in milliseconds, I assume. No humans in the loop.
Has to be. The latency of a human saying drone alpha climb 10 feet would be too slow. This is already being tested in the drone zones like Dallas-Fort Worth. The challenge is interoperability. Does the Amazon drone talk to the Wing drone? If they're using different proprietary systems, they're essentially blind to each other. This is why the FAA's remote ID rule, which became mandatory in late 2023, was so controversial but necessary. Every drone over half a pound has to broadcast its ID and location. It's essentially a digital license plate that allows the grid to see them.
It's funny you mentioned Dallas, Fort Worth. Daniel called it the drone delivery capital of the US. Why there? Is it just that Texans like robots more, or is there a specific geographic reason?
It's the Goldilocks zone of logistics. You have massive suburban sprawl, lots of houses with yards, which is perfect for drone delivery. You have relatively flat terrain and predictable weather. But most importantly, you have a concentrated cluster of retail hubs. Wing, Zipline, and Flytrex all set up shop there because they could partner with Walmart and local malls. In 2024, Wing did a trial there that hit a 99.5% success rate. When you have that kind of density, the economics start to make sense. You aren't flying 10 miles to deliver one coffee, you're flying 2 miles to deliver 50 coffees to 50 different houses in the same neighborhood.
99.5% is impressive, but that 0.5% is where the lawsuits live. Daniel mentioned a 2024 Amazon crash in Oregon. A wind shear event caused a malfunction, and it did over $2 million in damages. How do you insure a fleet of flying blades?
That Oregon crash was a wake-up call. It wasn't just a software bug, it was a physics problem. A sudden gust of wind pushed the drone into a power line, which caused a fire. This is why the industry is moving toward much more conservative flight envelopes. The insurance models for this are basically being written as we go. Companies like Amazon essentially self-insure because no traditional carrier wants to touch the risk of a swarm yet. But as the data piles up, as we see millions of hours of safe flight, the premiums will stabilize. It's the same journey autonomous cars are on. The first crash is a headline. The millionth delivery is a statistic.
I'm still stuck on the noise thing, Herman. You mentioned the zipline mothership staying high, but if I'm in a quiet suburb and there are 50 drones an hour flying over my house, that's going to affect property values. We've done episodes on airport noise before. Episode 1427, Under the Flight Path, and the health effects of constant low-level noise are real. Are we just trading traffic on the road for traffic in the sky?
That is the big societal trade-off. One drone is a novelty. 100 drones is a nuisance. This is why acoustic engineering has become a massive part of drone design. If you look at the propellers on a modern delivery drone, they don't look like regular propellers. They have serrated edges, or they're enclosed in ducts to mask the high-frequency whine. Wing's drones actually use a different pitch for their rotors, so the sound blends more into the background white noise of a city. But you're right, urban planning is going to have to change. We might see drone corridors that follow major highways or industrial zones to keep the noise away from residential bedrooms.
But how does that work in practice? If the drone corridor is over the highway, and I live 3 miles from the highway, does the drone just pop out of the corridor and buzz over my neighbor's gazebo anyway?
That's exactly the tension. We're looking at a hub and spoke model for noise. The main transit happens over industrial areas or transit lines, and the drone only enters residential airspace for the final few hundred yards of the flight. Think of it like a plane landing. It stays high and follows a set path until it's absolutely necessary to descend. Some cities are even talking about delivery nodes. Centralized lockers in a neighborhood where drones drop things off, and you walk a block to get it. It's less convenient than your porch, but it keeps the sky noise concentrated in one spot.
I can see the zoning board meetings now. We don't want the burrito bots over our park, but let's look at the second order effects. If this actually works, if we get to the $5 delivery fee and the 99% reliability, what does it do to the last mile? Workforce. We're talking about millions of delivery drivers. Is the drone the automated loom of the 21st century?
It's a shift, certainly. But remember, the drone is only good for that 5-pound, 5-mile niche. You still need people to load the drones, maintain the drones, and handle the non-conforming deliveries. If you're ordering a couch, a drone isn't taking your job. What it likely does is change the hub model. Instead of one giant warehouse 40 miles away, you have micro-fulfillment centers in the back of your local grocery store or even on the roof of a parking garage. The driver becomes a fleet technician. It's a higher skill, lower physical toll job.
But wait, let's dig into that micro-fulfillment thing. If we're putting drone nests on top of every Whole Foods and Walgreens, isn't that a massive infrastructure cost? Who pays for the nests?
Right now, the tech companies are eating that cost as R&D, but eventually it'll be part of the commercial lease. Imagine a drone as a service model. A shopping center installs a universal launch pad on the roof. Any tenant, the pharmacy, the pizza place, the florist, can pay a subscription to use the drone fleet. It's like having a shared elevator in an office building. The infrastructure becomes a utility. But you're right, the upfront cost is huge. We're talking about automated battery swapping stations, weather monitoring stations, and secure loading bays. It's not just a drone, it's an entire ecosystem.
It sounds like we're rebuilding the city from the top down, which brings me to the privacy question. Daniel didn't mention it specifically, but I know people are freaked out by flying cameras. If a drone is lowering a package into my yard, is it also recording my neighbor sunbathing? Or worse, is it scanning my backyard to see if I need a new lawnmower so it can send me an ad?
That is the creep factor that keeps regulators up at night. Most companies, like Wing and Zipline, are very vocal about privacy by design. Their cameras are generally low resolution for navigation purposes, not for high-def surveillance. In many cases, the data is processed on the edge, meaning the drone sees a tree, labels it obstacle, and deletes the image immediately. It never goes to a server. However, the potential for mission creep is there. If Amazon knows you have a trampoline because their drone saw it, that's valuable data. We're going to need very strict data privacy laws specifically for aerial incidental data collection.
Incidental data collection is a very polite way of saying spying on my grill setup. But okay, let's wrap this back to Daniel's timeline question. How far away are we from this reality? If I'm in a mid-sized US city, when can I expect to see the skies full of drones?
If you look at the trajectory of the FAA Pathfinder programs and the current success in Dallas, I think we're looking at a bifurcated timeline. Medical delivery hospital to hospital or pharmacy to home for critical meds is basically reaching mainstream status by 2027 or 2028. The regulatory path is clearer because the public good is so high. For the pizza and patio retail side, we're probably 5 to 7 years away from it being a standard option in most major metropolitan areas. The technology is there, but the density of infrastructure, the charging pads, the UTM grid, the micro hubs, that takes time and billions in capital expenditure.
So, I have a few more years of actually putting on pants to go to the store. Good to know. But what about the breakthrough Daniel hinted at? What is the one thing that turns this from a cool trial in Dallas to a utility like electricity?
It's the battery density versus cost curve. Right now, these drones spend a huge amount of their energy just staying in the air. If we get a 20% jump in battery energy density, which solid-state batteries might provide toward the end of the decade, suddenly your payload goes from 5 pounds to 15 pounds, or your range doubles. That changes the math for every single delivery. Suddenly, you don't need a hub on every corner. You can serve a whole city from 3 locations. That's the tipping point for economic viability.
It always comes back to the batteries, doesn't it? We're all just living in a world defined by how many lithium ions we can cram into a box. But I have to say, the zipline model in Africa really changed my perspective on this. It's easy to dismiss this as lazy first world problems, but seeing it save lives in Rwanda makes the tech for tech's sake argument fall apart. It's a legitimate leapfrog technology.
It really is. There was a case in 2024 where a zipline drone delivered a specific rare anti-venom to a remote clinic in under 20 minutes. By car, it would have been 3 hours. That person is alive today because of a catapult and a fixed-wing drone. That's the North Star for the industry. If you can do that, you can certainly figure out how to deliver a burrito to a guy in a park without crashing. The stakes are lower, but the engineering challenges are the same.
It's the ultimate dual-use technology. Saving lives on one hand, saving me from a walk to the kitchen on the other. But Herman, let's talk about the rogue drone scenario. If these things are autonomous, what's stopping someone from hacking the grid and sending 500 drones to the White House, or just making them all drop their packages at once?
Cybersecurity is the hidden cost of the $63 delivery. These drones aren't just flying on a simple radio frequency like your hobbyist drone. They use encrypted, frequency-hopping links. The command and control C2 link is usually protected by the same level of encryption used by the military or high-level banking. Plus, most of these systems have a dead man's switch. If the drone detects that its command signal has been tampered with or is being spoofed, it immediately enters a fail-safe mode, usually landing in place or returning to a secure home. Coordinate using only its internal GPS and visual sensors. You can't just hijack a fleet with a laptop and a Wi-Fi antenna.
Well, that's a relief. I don't want a rogue burrito bot uprising on my 2029 bingo card. But what about the physical security? If a drone is hovering 20 feet above my yard, what's stopping my neighbor from taking a pot shot at it with a BB gun, or just throwing a net over it to steal the package?
That's actually a federal crime in the US. Because drones are considered aircraft by the FAA, interfering with one is legally the same as throwing a rock at a Boeing 747. People have already been arrested for shooting down drones. Beyond the legal deterrent, the drones are equipped with cameras that are recording everything. If you try to kidnap a drone, it's basically filming its own kidnapping in real time and uploading the footage to the cloud. It's the worst thing to steal because it knows exactly where it is and who is touching it.
It's a snitch, a flying high-tech snitch. I love it. Officer, the drone says I was the one who stole the lo mein, but let's look at the environmental side. Daniel asked if this is actually greener than a van. Sure, it's electric, but those batteries have a footprint, and flying takes a lot more energy than rolling on tires.
This is a point of huge debate in the logistics world. A study from Carnegie Mellon found that for small packages under 5 pounds, a drone is significantly more energy efficient than a gasoline-powered delivery van, especially in stop-and-go suburban traffic. A van weighing 4,000 pounds shouldn't be used to deliver a 2-ounce bottle of medicine. That's a massive waste of energy. However, if the van is electric and making 50 stops in a tight loop, the van wins on a per-package energy basis. The greenest version of the future is a mix. The big electric truck handles the heavy stuff and the bulk routes, and the drone handles the urgent or isolated single-item deliveries.
So it's not either or, it's both and, which makes sense. I don't want a drone trying to carry a case of water, and I don't want a giant truck blocking my street just to drop off a pack of AA batteries.
And the noise pollution we talked about is actually the bigger environmental concern for most people. Carbon emissions are invisible, but a drone at 7 a.m. is very audible. That's the social license these companies have to earn. They have to prove that the convenience is worth the soundtrack of the neighborhood.
I wonder if we'll get silent zones like we have quiet cars on trains. This neighborhood has voted for no-fly Sundays. I can see that becoming a major local political issue. Vote for me, and I'll keep the sky clear of Amazon.
It's already happening in some parts of Australia. There were community protests in Bonathon, a suburb of Canberra, because the early wing drones were too loud. Alphabet actually went back to the drawing board and redesigned the propellers to be quieter because of that feedback. It was a pivot or die moment for the industry. If you don't have the community on your side, the regulators will eventually shut you down, no matter how good the tech is.
That's a fascinating point. It's not just about what the tech can do, but what the community will let it do. It's like the early days of the automobile where people were terrified of these devil wagons spooking their horses. We eventually adjusted our cities and our expectations.
We paved the world for cars. We might have to digitally pave the sky for drones. And that means new laws about air rights above your house. Do you own the air up to 500 feet? Currently, the FAA says no, they do. But if a drone is hovering 10 feet above your fence to drop a package next door, is that a trespass? We are going to see some landmark Supreme Court cases on this in the next decade.
I can't wait for the get off my lawn guy to become the get out of my sky guy. But Herman, I have to ask about the bird problem. I've seen videos of hawks attacking drones. Are we entering an era of man-made machine versus nature?
The avian conflict is real, Corn. Territorial birds, especially magpies in Australia and eagles in the US, see drones as intruders. There have been several recorded takedowns where a bird of prey successfully disabled a drone. Most companies are now using avoidance maneuvers, where the drone can detect a bird's flight pattern and move away. Some are even experimenting with ultrasonic bird deterrence, though that's controversial because you don't want to harass the wildlife. It's just another variable in the detect and avoid software. The drone has to know the difference between a kite, a bird, and a power line.
Target acquired. Red-tailed hawk. Initiating evasive maneuvers. It's like a nature documentary directed by Michael Bay. I love it. But let's bring it home. We've talked about the tech, the cost, the noise, and the birds. If you had to bet, Herman, what is the killer app for drone delivery? Is it the burrito, or is it something we haven't thought of?
I think the killer app is actually the return. Think about how much we all hate returning things to Amazon or UPS. You have to find a box, print a label, and drive to a drop-off point. Imagine a drone that comes to your house, you put the item in a bag, it winches it up, and it's gone. That reverse logistics is a huge pain point for consumers and a huge cost for retailers. If drones can automate the return process, that's a game changer for e-commerce.
Oh man, you're right. I have a box in my hallway right now that's been there for 3 weeks because I'm too lazy to go to the UPS store. If a drone could just yoink it off my porch, I'd pay for that service tomorrow.
That's the value add. It's not just about getting things faster, it's about removing the friction of physical goods. We've done it with digital goods. We don't go to Blockbuster anymore, we just stream. Drones are trying to stream physical objects. It's a much harder engineering problem because physics is less forgiving than fiber optics, but the goal is the same.
Streaming physical objects. I like that. It makes me feel like I'm living in the Star Trek future, even if it's just a bag of chips coming from the local CVS. Well, I for one am looking forward to the day I can stay in my tree and have a snack lowered to me on a tether. It's the sloth dream, Herman. It's what I've been training for my whole life.
I knew you'd find a way to make this about your lifestyle, Corn, but you're right, the hover and drop is very sloth-friendly. No stairs required.
It's the ultimate evolution of the remote control. First, we got to change the channel without getting up. Then we got to order food without picking up the phone. Now, we're going to get the food without opening the front door. We are slowly becoming the people in Wall-E, Herman. Floating around in chairs while robots do everything.
As long as the robots don't run out of battery midway through delivering your lo mein, we'll be fine. But that's the real takeaway here. The technology is no longer the bottleneck. It's the economics, the regulations, and the social acceptance. We're in the messy middle where the tech is ready but the world isn't.
Well, not exactly, as you would say, but I'll take it. This has been a fascinating deep dive. Daniel, thanks for the prompt. It's one of those topics where the sci-fi version is so loud that we often miss the very quiet, very real progress being made in places like Kigali and Logan.
And thanks to everyone for listening. If you're curious about the more tactical side of drone tech, you can actually look back at our discussion on swarm technology in episode 1198. It gives some good context on why detect and avoid is so hard when you have hundreds of units in the air. We also touched on the legalities of airspace in episode 942, Who Owns the Air, which is a great companion piece to this.
Big thanks to our producer, Hilbert Flumingtop, for keeping us on the right flight path and making sure we didn't crash into any power lines during this recording. And as always, a huge thank you to Modal for providing the GPU credits that power the AI behind this show.
This has been My Weird Prompts. If you're enjoying the show, head over to myweirdprompts.com to find our RSS feed and subscribe on your favorite platform. We're also on all the usual socials if you want to send us your own weird prompts for future episodes.
We'll be back next time with another prompt from Daniel. Until then, keep your eyes on the skies, and maybe keep a hard hat handy, just in case that Amazon drone hits a wind shear. Or, at the very least, keep your backyard clear so the drone doesn't accidentally deliver your pizza into your swimming pool.
See ya.
Bye. This episode was produced using Google Gemini 3 Flash, text-to-speech by Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our